So as you've heard, we're recording. Appreciate everyone for joining. We covered this topic yesterday. We're going to address it again today, though there'll be some variation because it's live and there's frankly so much to cover. As a reminder, if you have questions, please add them to the chat. Our team will respond. For example, someone already asked a question: is there a United States probation officer in this webinar? The answer to that is a big no. Though if they were here, that would be a great thing, because we're all about transparency and understanding policy and working to create a new record, whether you've been convicted at trial or pled guilty. So I hope that federal probation officers watch this interview. In fact, I encourage you to share with your eventual probation officer the steps you have taken to prepare to ensure that you are compliant, because we want you to hear what my probation officer told me or Scott. I think you're going to be easy. I don't think I'm going to have to waste a lot of time on you. And let's just make this a successful relationship. And you can do that if they know that you have prepared. So while no probation officer is here, I wish they were, because they'd admire all of you for taking the time, in my opinion. To that end, and to prove my point, I want to reiterate a couple of things. I encourage all of you to spend time at prisonprofessors.com. And by now, you know that our team gives away all of this content for free. And we do so because we have a passion to help people traversing this wretched system. Many people make bad decisions and live with a great deal of regret. And as you know, we can't change the past. We can't change that you're involved in a government investigation. We cannot change that perhaps you didn't hire the right lawyer or don't feel as if you have done everything possible. We want to change that. We also do not want, as I mute everyone, what we also do not want is any of you or whatever English is correct. We don't want any of you to speak about us the way some of you unfortunately speak about your lawyers. You feel forgotten. They said one thing and did another. They didn't prepare you for the probation report. You didn't understand the personal narrative. We don't ever want that to happen. For that reason, we're here to offer these webinars, to stay on as long as necessary, to answer your questions, and to ensure you're moving forward from a position of strength. To that end, as I come back to our trusted screen share, in order to succeed, it's going to require real work in between these webinars. Right? We're here for an hour and a half. Pray that you find value in them. But the real work happens between today and what happens in the next webinar. And I don't want to sound cliche or like Tony Robbins, but it's true. The work you do every day leading up will matter. For that reason, I encourage you, and if Sam or Scott, someone on our team, will add the prisonprofessors.com subject matter experts link to the chat. Now, someone on our team recently spent, I think it was 6 or 7 hours straight watching these videos. Why? To learn what subject matter experts are saying. So I encourage all of you, if you're on federal probation, or you will be on federal probation, to watch the interview that Michael Santos filmed with the former chief of federal probation. It's like interviewing the commissioner of the NBA or NFL. I don't have access to him. I run white collar advice. The Prison Professors nonprofit does, because we give it all away for free, and we're grateful that Chris Maloney spoke to that with Michael. So if you really want to understand the nuances of federal probation, we encourage you to watch the interview, and you will hear it from a different perspective. Today, you're going to hear our perspective as someone. I went through probation for 3 years, had ups and downs. Sam, Scott, everyone on our team has gone through it. You hear it from our perspective as a former defendant of prisoners. You should learn from Chris Maloney's perspective of how they view someone like you. They're used to happy talk. They're used to being told what they want to hear. They do not see enough follow through. They do not see a plan. They don't see action. I encourage you I beg all of you to absolutely watch that interview if you truly want to prepare, in my opinion. And by the way, while you're there, we also have subject matter interview experts with Hugh Hurwitz, the former director of the Bureau of Prisons, if you want to learn more about the First Step Act and its implementation. There may be some changes coming on the First Step Act, by the way. Michael Santos, my partner, is traveling right now, speaking in prisons. He will report and write about that update to the First Step Act soon. Did interviews with federal judges, former wardens, John Gustin, halfway house and home confinement, These are things you need to do to be truly informed and prepared, because you're going to get conflicting information. We have someone who went to prison. The case manager said, you're not even eligible for the First Step Act to blow him out, get him out of the office. But it's a law. Of course he does. His response mattered. He didn't complain. He didn't bitch. He didn't say, but I attended a webinar where they said that I do, and it's not fair, and you're not treating me well. He's biding his time. He's working on his reentry plan because it's a law. It's not subjective. He's going to benefit from it. So how you respond matters, and these interviews with subject matter experts will help. As I get going, are there any questions that any of you have as we transition into how our team thinks you should prepare for federal probation? No? Good. If you do, please put up that hand. Continuing, if you watch the subject matter interview with Chris Maloney, he said, well, let me guess. Let me ask a question here. Let's make this interactive so I'm not a talking head for an hour. If any of you are willing to engage me, I'd be grateful. Preferably not someone on our team. What do you think the first thing the probation officer does when he gets your file? So you're in prison. A probation officer may call your spouse and say, hello, I'm Joe Smith, the probation officer. I've been assigned to oversee your husband. I need to come to the home to do a walkthrough and ask you some questions. Then when you meet this probation officer down the road, what type of preparation do you think he's done before that meeting? Can anyone share with me? What do you think that probation officer has done before he even shakes your hand? Go ahead, Mr. Nebraska.
I would guess he would just look at your case file and your crime.
Right.
And that'd be it.
So as Chris Maloney told us, prior to ever meeting you, the probation officer is required to have done their due diligence and homework. So the first thing they're going to do is read the probation report, of your crime, your background, any medical issues, finances. In a little bit, we're going to get into how people are violating their probation and getting sent back to prison because they rely on their finances, both in the probation report and on probation. The first thing they're going to do is going to read that probation report. Now, some of you may be thinking, my lawyer didn't prepare me. I didn't understand the importance of the interview. There are things in there that I wish were there, but they're not. Don't fret. We want to ensure that you're making better decisions moving forward. But the first thing they're going to read is that probation report. So I beg all of you, if you've not had your probation report, prepare, do it correctly. We have a plethora of free resources to help you prepare for the pre-sentence report. Please do it. Following the pre-sentence report, the probation officer will review your reentry plan. Can anyone here offer their insights on what they think a reentry plan is besides our team? What is that?
Hey, Justin, it's Jason. I'm thinking that's your plan, your personal plan as to what you're going to do when you get out. What have you done while you've been in, and do the two match? And can they trust what you say about what's going to happen after you exit the walls?
That's right. So I want all of you to continue to embrace the cynicism that is the criminal justice system. They may not see you as a good father or husband, which I know you are, but they view you for the worst decision you've ever made in your life. They're cynical, and they expect you to tell them exactly what they want to hear. And having attended hundreds of sentencing hearings and spoken with federal probation officers, they expect you to tell them exactly that with very little follow through. So if any of you have yet to go to prison, or if you are home from prison, or if you're watching this and you have a loved one in prison, as soon as this webinar is over, I would do two things. I would watch our free webinar, already filmed, on what is a best-in-class reentry plan. We can send you a template of a reentry plan to help guide you during this process, because the narrative is a dynamic document. It should grow. The reentry plan is a dynamic document. It should grow. Now, the PSR is a static document because it's done, unless you get it amended, which can be very difficult. So you have the PSR, but in many cases, as Maloney told us in this interview, you get sentenced and you do the PSR. You may come home from prison years later and start probation. What's happened in the interim? That is what you are required to fill. That is the challenge for you. So as we proceed on this webinar of how to prepare for federal probation, before I get into do's and don'ts and the obvious, let me articulate to all of you, prepare for the PSR. If it's already done and you don't like it, I'm sorry. The next step is creating your reentry plan. If you need a draft, reach out to Sam. We'll
I've
send you.
uploaded it.
Great.
I've uploaded it on the site.
Perfect. Create your reentry plan. Then you can expect the probation officer will have spoken with the prosecutor, potentially, have spoken with the pretrial services officer who oversaw you, potentially. They're going to learn more about you from people that know you better to form an opinion of what you may be like on probation. That's why conduct at every stage of the journey is very important. When you surrender to prison, of course, you'll have a team meeting with your case manager. I would articulate to her your goals and plans in prison by way of the reentry plan that you will continue to update along the way. Now, some strategies that I encourage you to pursue. Let me ask you, what are some ways, knowing that you need to nurture relationships? That's really the heart of what we're doing here. Working to create a relationship for probation that will ensure you have higher levels of liberty. You can potentially work as an entrepreneur, because I hate getting those phone calls from people that say, hey, my PO won't approve my job and he's forcing me to work at KFC for $15 an hour. All work is honorable, but I know you don't want to work at KFC unless you don't have to. And when we retrace what happened, here's the problem. The dude didn't do anything in prison to prepare or show that he was different from the government's version of events, that he's a thief that stole millions of dollars from people. And he's done very little to make amends beyond saying, I'm sorry. And he told the judge, I'll find a way to pay the victims back. And he has done nothing. Those of you who pursue that path, you're not going to get what you want, which is higher levels of liberty, getting off probation early, and potentially working for yourself as an entrepreneur, which is what many of you want, which is what I wanted and thankfully was able to obtain because of what I did in prison, including writing letters to my probation officer. Is there anyone here that could tell me why there's value in writing a letter to your probation officer from prison? Let's talk about that for a moment. And what would you write? Can anyone, what are you going to write? Hi, I got up at 6 and went to the chow hall and called home and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. What do you share with that probation officer? Can anyone engage me?
I would give them a 6-month report probably on, I know we've talked about if, 6-month report on your work, on your classes, recidivism classes, and then any book reports that you may do.
Yes. I want all of you to understand any tendencies you have, meaning are you influenced easily by other people? Because Nate Schott, who's on this webinar, a doctor who I'm going to meet with tomorrow in Los Angeles or Orange County, he was in prison. And Nate can tell you that there are a lot of people in prison who have great ideas and they want to do great things, but prison's a microcosm of society. They may be influenced by don't do that. It don't matter. You're a felon. Ain't nobody going to read it. You're wasting time. Why are you working so hard? Why don't you start when you have 6 months to the halfway house? Famous prison parlance that's utter garbage. So if you can embrace the reality that you may do work that may never be read, you're more successful. If you can embrace the reality that you may work for weeks, months, and potentially years, as Michael Santos did, without any inkling that it could come back to you in some way besides the dignity of doing hard work, you'll be successful. Because people at times in prison want immediate gratification. It's part of what led us into the system to begin with. So I'm encouraging all of you to somehow, some way embrace that it's your prison term. The last thing you should care about is what people think, because many of those people that mock and make fun of you, as arrogant as it sounds, will be calling you someday for work. And I can assure you that happened with scores of people that served time with Michael Santos and me. Do your own thing and write. Create content. And it can be 4 or 5 minutes it could take to sit and write a letter. How hard is it to write a letter to your probation officer? They view you as a criminal because of the probation report and your crime and the victim statements. If you're not working to change it, you ain't going to get what you want. So even if you're doing it because you truly feel remorseful and you're sorry, or doing it gets you closer to your end, I want you to do it for the right reasons. But if you only do it, fake it kind of to make it to get what you want, fine. Please do it. So I'd encourage all of you to write a letter every 2 or 3 months to your probation officer. And it's so incredibly simple. Hi, Mr. Probation Officer. My name is Justin, writing to introduce myself. I've been in prison for 4 months. During this time, I've used it to think, to understand my choices. Because of my bad choices, I created victims. I embarrassed my family. I ruined my reputation. I lost my licenses. and I'm resigned to do better. Here's how. Since I've been in prison, I participated in this programming. This is how it's helped me. I'm also working to grow my network because I lost my licenses and I can no longer be a stockbroker. For that reason, I'm reaching out to employers with hopes they'll give me an opportunity. Here are those letters I'm sharing. That just took me 43 seconds. Then you write them 3 months later. This is what I've done since my last letter. Then when you go to what's called a team meeting in prison, Sam, are you still there? Or does Sam go rogue? Sam, give us your 30-second shtick on what the team meeting is in federal prison.
Sure. You get a team meeting within about the first 2 to 3 weeks of getting there. You walk into the case manager. She hands you a piece of paper and says, sign it. You want to shake their hand. You want to tell them all your story. You want to set up a relationship with them. They say, sign it and get out. And you're looking around dazed and confused. What do you mean? Let me tell you. Let me introduce myself. Sign it and get out. I don't have time for you. Okay. You have literally 10 seconds. 3 months later, or 6 months, depending upon the length of your sentence, you go back in a second time for an update team meeting. Now you've been in the system for a couple months. You understand that case managers tend to be miserable people, unhappy people. They don't want to talk to you. They understand everybody wants the same thing you do. They want to get out as quickly as possible. But now when you go in there, you hand them, a release plan and say, look what I've been doing. Let me show you how I've been programming. Let me show you how productive I am. Now you have an opportunity to strike up a 2-minute conversation with them. Well, that's 1 minute and 45 seconds longer than the first one. And now you're starting to build up some sort of relationship with them that you'll be able to impress on them, why you are different than the other 10 people standing in line, all for the same day's meeting, all who want to get home the same day you do. So they're miserable people. Just understand that.
Some of them, to be clear, some can be kind. A little bit as a crapshoot. I had a case manager that was somewhat difficult, but there was a phenomenal case manager named Mrs. Mann who would go above and beyond. She would process visitation forms the day she got it. Other case managers may wait 2 weeks. We don't want our happiness or success in prison to be contingent on a case manager, or if we're getting email or phone. Remember, guys who have been to prison freak out if mail call is delayed or the USA Today doesn't come. We can't focus on what you can control, which is how much you write, even knowing people may not read it. Much like some of you on this webinar have said to me, I didn't write a narrative, and if I did, my lawyer said he didn't turn it in, or I turned in a narrative and I know my judge didn't read it. I believe the judge read it. If it didn't impact your sentence, I'm sorry, can't guarantee that it will, but it may influence someone down the road. So when someone asks, do you have to write a letter every 3 months? You should write a letter as much as you feel comfortable. Now, when I mentioned to my dear friend Andrew Paulchek, who passed away and who died on the track in prison while running 10 miles, months before, when I shared with him that I was writing letters to when I shared with Andrew that I was writing letters to my probation officer, he kind of laughed and mocked me, said, it will never matter. But moreover, he said, how the hell do you know how do you know who to send the letter to? You might as well send it in, put a letter in a bottle and put it in the ocean. And of course, I shared that with Michael Santos, and it wasn't the easiest conversation. If any of you know Michael, he was pretty direct in his response. So some of you may be wondering, how am I going to write a letter to my probation officer if I don't know who it is? Fair question. You should do what Michael taught me to do, which is what I want to teach you to do. I'm an ambassador sharing the message. Meeting him, learning from him changed my life. It's why I'm here 14 years later. It's very easy to find out the probation office that is going to oversee you. Super simple. Ask your lawyer, but you're going to know. It takes 3. Ask your lawyer. Then, when I asked my mom to ask my lawyer from prison, my lawyer, Joel Athey, told my mom, hey, it's the probation office in Woodland Hills, 22041 Burbank Boulevard, 91304. Awesome. From there, I wrote a letter that said, to whom it may concern, or to my future probation officer. Hand wrote the letter, made a copy of it in the commissary, because in the commissary you can buy a copy card, made a copy of it so it looks really authentic that you have the handwritten letter, mailed it, and I mailed several of them. Now down the road, I didn't know if he ever got them, but I just mailed them, right? You should be preparing to write hundreds of letters. As Michael Santos has written extensively, he felt like a fisherman akin at sea, casting lines, hoping people will bite. You need to do that. So write, make a copy. Now, eventually, when I met with my probation officer, he had the letters. He didn't mention that he read them, but they found his way to him. I, too, had a copy that I carried with me, because if he didn't receive them, I was going to hand them to him and say, these are letters I wrote you from prison. I don't know if you ever received them. He did. We didn't discuss it. I presume he took the time to read them, but I know they were a part of my central file, which matters because some probation officers go do other jobs. They quit, they get fired. You may transfer districts, as Michael did from San Francisco to Orange County, and you have a new probation officer. Then you need to establish a new relationship with that probation officer, which is easier if you've done the work over the weeks and months and years leading up to that meeting. If not, you're starting anew and you're missing opportunities. Before we get into actual probation, I want to stress that all of you need to have work lined up when you go to the halfway house. If not, it can be very difficult. A number of people over the years have said, I have a job lined up, my buddy's going to hire me. Then they get to probation and the friend says, I can't hire you, business is slow, I don't need these people from the halfway house breathing down my neck and calling 9 times a day. We have had people lose their jobs because the employer doesn't call back quickly enough because they're going to call repeatedly. So my suggestion from prison, much like you're building your reentry plan and updating your narrative and repairing your reputation, and getting all of your character reference letters updated, because those should be a part of your reentry plan. The character reference letter is an asset. Use it. Ask the person to modify and edit it for a probation officer or an employer, whoever it may be. This reentry plan should be extensive. So as you are doing that, write letters from prison, try to have a job lined up and make your experience in the halfway house easier. Because if you don't have a job lined up, especially as we're kind of moving our way out of COVID, they're going to say, great, we lined up a job for you because we have a relationship with an employer. Go here. Or come back with 20 employment applications today. And I suspect in time, I don't know if Sam or Scott, you've heard anything about this. They're currently not taking the 25% in the halfway house still because of COVID, Sam and Scott. Is that correct?
Yeah, as of, 2 or 3 weeks ago, at least in West Palm, they're not taking it.
So I read that Biden extended the COVID emergency through April.
Yes, through June. I think through June.
Through June. Okay. So that's good news for many of you pursuing the potential CARES Act and things of that nature. Earlier release, make sure any medical and health issues are both in the probation report and in your reentry plan. That's very important. So the CARES Act still exists. But at some point, that 25% number may come back where they want you pay them 25% of what you make, and you'll have more liberty in the halfway house if you're working, which is why you want to line up the right job. I had a job picking up phones for 3 months at $15 an hour. And by giving them the 25% and working, I was out of the halfway house for 14 hours a day, which was great. And it enabled me to just have more liberty. Now, when you start federal probation, Sam, can you touch on the first thing the probation officer may do? Are there any forms or anything they're going to want you to fill out?
Yeah, they come to your house, they sit down with you, and 2 sets of forms, financial forms. They're going to hand you a stack of financial forms to fill out for you, if you're married, for your spouse. They want to know all your financial position, especially if you have restitution, and your family's financial situation. Keeping in mind, they typically will only focus on yours, but they want to know everything. The second are psychological profile forms. So once a year, you get a series of forms, probably, I think, 15 to 18 pages. And if you've ever done a psychological profile test, they ask you the same question 6 different ways. Are you suicidal? Do you do drugs? What would you do if you were put in a stressful situation? Would you commit a crime? What do you look for the easy way out? So every year you get the same set of psychological forms to fill out as well. So you get the financial forms, psychological forms that go into your file as soon as you meet them.
Thank you for that succinct response. There's a
Uh-oh.
What it is. Say it again. I'm sorry.
We lost you. Say that. We lost you for a second.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is that a little better? I don't know why that happened. Okay. Thank you. So when you start or meet with that federal probation officer and you fill out those forms, we encourage you to, besides sharing all of this content with him, be prepared to articulate what it is you hope to do while on probation. There are some people that may write a narrative and they don't own it, and they say something that is inconsistent with what they have written. And that happens. So we encourage you, whatever you are writing, to own it, be prepared to respond to it. And as you start probation, they will be more cynical and look after you the first few months while you're kind of getting going. Now, what I want to do is transition into a conversation about kind of do's and don'ts, why people violate their probation. And this, of course, will lead into more strategies of how we're actually going to prepare for it.
Hey, Justin, can I ask you a quick question first?
Yep.
Are you using probation report and PSR as the same?
Yeah, the probation interview will lead to a completed probation report. When you meet with the probation officer, they will have read the probation report, and they should also hopefully have read all other content we provided them along the way.
And are you saying that the reentry plan is the same as the release plan?
Yes, yeah, synonymous. Yep, like $10 bill at 2.5, you still got $10. Same thing, just using kind of different words here.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Now, once you start probation, the probation officer will give you a map that you can travel. Now, some people are depending. Every case is different. Our team has worked with people that were immediately able to travel the whole country, even leave the country. We've had people go to Argentina, Israel, Europe. Most people are going to be like Sam and Scott and me, where you're on 3 years of supervised release, and they are going to give you a map that you can travel. And if you are to leave the district, you need permission. Sam or Scott or Sam, can you tell us how much notification does the probation officer typically need for them to approve your travel?
So 48 hours notice for domestic travel, 2 weeks notice for international travel. I asked for my passport back a month into supervised release, but I had to go to the judge for that. So 48 hours domestic, 2 weeks international.
So
that's interesting for me, Sam. She had said no international travel till I'm off paper, but that's something that I'm looking forward to hopefully working through. And for travel outside of the district, to send her a text message and ask for permission. So I think being aware of the variances everybody has in this and just being patient and humble.
Outside of
Sam, you didn't say you got permission. Did you get permission?
Did I get permission?
Did you get your passport back?
Yeah, I got my passport back. I had to get a new passport. The State Department destroyed your passport. I had to apply for a new one. It took 8 weeks to get a new one. Yeah.
So I would say that Sam was pretty fortunate because I had a speaking invitation in Europe. I asked my probation officer, and the judge and the probation officer kind of laughed away the request. They said, you're not leaving the country while on probation.
Justin,
I also had
this is Larry. Just to give you a different perspective on it. I had been told 2 weeks to travel nationally, 6 weeks internationally, and I got permission to go to Costa Rica, to Israel for family functions.
I think we're in the same area, Larry, aren't we?
Yeah, which is odd.
So what you're hearing is it's a subjective process. Probation officers are different people. They have different policies, which is somewhat ironic because Larry had a 10-year prison sentence. I had an 18-month sentence. I wasn't able to go to Canada or Europe. Well, Canada wouldn't let us in anyway because we're felons, but I wasn't able to go to Europe. But Larry, with a much longer sentence, has been able to leave the country. It's a very subjective process. Some districts are totally different. Jessica, I'll come to you in a few moments. Thank you. So we just want you to prepare for some disappointment, but try to do all you can to prepare for success. Now, you want to get permission to travel. Any and all business travel on my end had to be business related. So I had many events across the country. I needed permission to travel. I would have to get a letter from the organizer of the event on their letterhead attesting to the event, how much I was getting paid. And there were a couple of times where the probation officer, to test me, even called the event organizer. It only happened like once or twice very early on when I started to get paid speaking engagements across the country. He just did it once or twice to confirm. But if you're going to travel outside the district, it typically has to be work related. I even tested one time trying to go to a personal event, and the probation officer said it's not going to happen. Some people have gotten into trouble and violated their probation when they put in a request to travel. They don't even hear back from the probation officer. They presume that it's okay. They travel, they get caught, and the probation officer says, I never approved it. You need that permission because technically the probation officer is supposed to notify the U.S. attorney in that district that you have arrived there. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. The second I would land on a travel, I would email him, I have arrived in New York. The second I would land back at LAX, when I turned on my iPhone, I would send him an email. I have returned. And he would always say, thank you, always letting them know that I'm here and that I've arrived. Now, some ways that people have violated their probation, of course, traveling outside the district without permission. In one case, I think the probation officer knew, and he waited and waited And 1 week before the person completed his 3 years of supervised release, he was violated because the probation officer had done an audit of his bank accounts and bank statements and saw that it was San Diego. He had left the Central District of California, drove down to San Diego without permission. He got a coffee at a Coffee Bean, and he wasn't approved to go there. And the probation officer saw the expense. And a week before probation ended, he violated his probation. Now, this person was, I should have paid cash, whatever it is, he's missing the point. It's not a matter of paying cash. You shouldn't have left the district without permission. But that's a common way that people get into trouble, leaving and not thinking they're going to get caught. And what happens sometimes on probation is kind of what happens in prison. Many people who've been to prison don't engage in the hustle right away, but after you're there for a while, you're like, hey, I know it. I understand this environment. I'm free. It's no big deal. You let your guard down, you get into trouble. And I made mistakes on probation too, without thinking it was that big a deal. Continuing, certainly opening bank accounts or getting loans without permission is a clear violation. If you have restitution, even if you don't, it will state that you may need to get permission to open a bank account or line of credit. But how easy, Sam, share an example in your case of how easily you could have violated probation on this loan or line of credit.
Well, when you get home, if typically a lot of us will experience our banks firing us before we go into prison. And the first thing you're going to do when you get home is open up a new account. And if you don't, or an example, when I met with my probation officer and handed him my first set of financial forms, he came back to me a couple of weeks later and he said, you didn't disclose a credit card. I said, what are you talking about? I disclosed everything. He said, no, here's a credit report. You have a Gap card. I said, I don't have a Gap card. Well, apparently I've had a Gap card for 20 years. I've never used it. My wife and daughter have used it. There was a zero balance. He said, you should have told me about the Gap card. I said, look, I didn't even know I had it. My wife and daughter had it. He said, well, look, you have a zero balance. I didn't know restitution, but you got to be careful. You should have disclosed that. So something as minor as that, it can get you in trouble.
That's right. I'm actually in Los Angeles today filming this webinar at my former business partner, Sam Pompeo's home. I sold real estate with Sam for a few years, and I was so grateful for all he did for me on his birthday one year, June 1st. I opened up an LLC for him as a gift at LegalZoom. Thanks for all you've done for me. I created an LLC for you as a business, as a birthday gift. Well, I guess I had to sign it when I did it, and I was on probation, and my probation officer called and said, who's Sam Pompeo? And what is this LegalZoom? And why are you on this paperwork? And I'm like, oh, that was just a gift for a friend of mine who's done so much for me. It was a small way to say thank you. He said, you just opened up an LLC without permission. You violated your probation. Now, he understood the motives behind it and he didn't punish me, but that's how simple it is. But if I had done 2 or 3 other things incorrectly along the way, if I didn't get my probation reports in on time, if I wasn't fully transparent about my travel, if I was an inconvenience and if I bothered him, if these things build up, they get to a point where we would say, well, I'm going to violate you. That was a mistake. He can clearly see that it was a harmless error. And I want you to think about these things. Also, I want you to be very clear about cash payments that you may receive in disclosing them. I had a tragic experience. Our first client actually paid cash. And believe it or not, it's a whole long story, but he didn't believe that I would disclose the cash. And he actually reached out to my probation officer thinking that I wouldn't disclose the income, which would be a violation of my probation, hiding income, because this client wanted to try to get cooperation credit because he didn't want to go to prison. He thought that it could help him. Think about that for a moment. Someone pays you $3,000 or $500 in cash. You don't disclose it on your monthly probation report thinking, oh, I need it. I don't want to disclose it. They're going to take it for restitution. The probation officer learns about it. It's a one-way ticket back to prison. I remember thinking, sure glad I disclosed that $3,000 cash payment. If not, I'd be standing for count. People are always watching. Keep that in mind with cash, with your PayPal, Venmo, you're getting paid. Disclose it all because per the forms that you signed, they have a right to audit and get all of it. I assure you, don't make decisions that are short-sighted because you want to hold on to a little bit of money. Continuing, hiding income and not filling out the probation reforms properly. Sam, what's that process like? What do you fill out forms on the first day of every single one? I did it in paper. Now it's online.
Yeah. So usually, the first 5 a.m. on the first, I go online. There's a U.S. probation online form. You answer routine questions. If nothing's changed, then you can pretty much, if your expenses haven't changed, your income hasn't changed, and if your restitution hasn't changed, or if you don't have any, it takes you right to the end, and you submit it. But you have to confirm: did you meet with any convicted felons? Did you get into any trouble? Did you have any encounters with law enforcement? So there's a whole series of questions that you have to. What's interesting is anything that has changed, or there's certain blocks that are noted as red on the form. When your PO gets it, if there's any changes, or when you fill out certain forms, that's what pops up on his phone. My probation officer showed me. That's what pops up on his phone for him to check to see if there's been any changes to your situation. So don't think if there's no changes, your guy's not going to read it. There are certain things that force him to read it.
Thank you. So continuing, if you owe money, you are required to turn over any tax refunds, inheritance, lottery winnings. I came into a tax refund. I disclosed it. Thankfully, if I didn't and try to keep it, the judge said he would have violated me and sent me back to prison. There are experiences like Kwame Kilpatrick, the former mayor of Detroit, who was remanded to custody because he didn't disclose a tax refund. So it's just a consequence of this process. If you owe restitution or fine, even if you don't, you still may have to disclose it. So I just want you to read the judgment and commitment order clearly. I encourage all of you to not put up a stink or fight over restitution. If they want what he wants you to pay. We will discuss at the end of this webinar. If you owe money, but you're not making any money, but your spouse makes money, what do you do? We encourage you to make the payment that he or she wants you to make. And in my case, I was strategic. I would send more, even though I really needed the money. I think for like 18 months, I went without health insurance when I came home. I would rather have paid my restitution because I needed to travel and work and get permission to use my city card to print copies of lessons from prison to help market and grow my business. It was all a priority for me. So whatever they tell you to pay. Thankfully, it turns out to be much less than the judge may have ordered at your sentencing. A lot of times the judge will say 10% or $500 a month, whichever is greater. If you come home and you don't have it, the probation officer is not going to initiate that if you don't have it. In my case, it was $100 a month, but I was very strategic and I would send 300 or 500. Or when I would begin to get paid speaking events, I would turn the whole honorarium over. Now, another way that some people have violated their probation, this is tricky. This is crazy. You disclose your assets when you start probation. When they walk around your house, part of what they're trained to do follows. They're looking on the walls. They're looking to see if you have a new painting, a new expensive carpet, or a piece of art. And they're going to see if you've disclosed that asset. They're going to look to see if assets you have now were previously disclosed in the probation report to see consistency. So I'm not telling you should disclose your earbuds that are $140. I'm not stupid. But if you have things that are of value and you don't put them in the probation report, they're going to think you're hiding and you're lying, and they're going to do an audit and see if you've disclosed it. Further, you need permission. You may need permission to sell assets. Unfortunately, someone with whom we worked was sent back to prison because he sold some crypto and he didn't disclose it. And his restitution was paid and he owed no money. But in the crypto space, the government kind of views, I think some of the people in that space is kind of shady. It's dark. It's a criminal business. It's new. They want more government regulation, more bureaucracy, of course. He was told anytime you sell an asset, I need to know. Now, that was different than if he sold 50 shares of Microsoft in his E-Trade account. Specifically, he was told, if you sell these assets, I need to know. He didn't. They violated him and sent him back to prison. So again, Big Brother's watching. Even if you don't hear from your probation officer for 4 or 5 months, they will lull you to sleep, especially when they say, send me 5 months of books, your statements, or they see if you've created LLCs or bank accounts. I'm telling you, it's very easy to get lulled to sleep. Kind of like a lot of people who are under criminal investigation. They don't hear from their lawyer for 1.5 years and they think the government's forgotten about them. They have not. They're watching. They're going to get back to you. I promise. Okay. So I want you thinking about these things while on probation. Now, number 8. Okay. Now, some people don't want to do, some people get a shorter prison sentence by asking for probation. Good strategy. Our team advises that strategy. In some cases, however, whether it's ordered or not, some people will lie about their community service because they do not want to do the work, or the community service is in lieu of having to do a full-time job, or it was court ordered and they don't do it. So I'm advising all of you, if you're doing community service for a shorter sentence, or it was given to you at your sentence, or you're telling your probation officer, I need to travel to do this, or this is in lieu of work, they will check and confirm. And I share the story of someone, I think he was at Habitat for Humanity. The probation officer called and they were like, yeah, he was here once. We don't know what you're talking about. Don't call again. Have a nice day. Lied about his community service hours, violated, went back to prison. A number of people volunteer through Prison Professors, our nonprofit. I can assure you of one thing: Michael Santos is deliberate, detailed, and every hour is tracked. And he shares the Google spreadsheet of the community service with the actual probation officer. And they all say, this is deliberate. This is helpful. Thank you. Some have said, this is really remarkable that you go through the time to do this. We're very grateful. If you're going to do community service, track every hour, track exactly what you're doing, who is the contact person, because that probation officer will be confirming. That much I can tell you. Possession of a firearm, get rid of the guns. Get rid of the guns. It's not just a violation, it's a new charge. There's a dentist in Nevada who served 6 months for a tax crime, and the probation officer learned that he had a gun. It's not a violation, it's a new charge. Felon in possession of a firearm. Keep that in mind. Get rid of the guns, no mas. Other ways that people have gotten into trouble, some are obvious, like the Farmer Bro guy who tweeted he'd pay someone to get a lock of Hillary Clinton's hair. It may not be that obvious, though I have known people, unfortunately, people in our community who have gotten into trouble by way of a simple Facebook response. Think about that. You're on Facebook, you're on Twitter. This is before Facebook went in the absolute toilet, when it was much more popular. But your probation officer will find a way to look at your Facebook profile. He told me he looked at everything that I did, my blog, my Facebook, watched my YouTube videos. He's watching all of it. It's a great chance for you to increase your message. But how many of you have said to our team, my victims lied at my sentencing? They didn't tell the truth. I don't agree with the victims or the government. Many of you feel that way. If you feel that way and someone posts something on Facebook like, hey, the criminal's home from prison, can't believe you white privileged guy, they let you out after 18 months, you stole $4 million from people, must be nice. That happened. And someone responds, F you, you don't know the facts, so-and-so lied, et cetera, et cetera. Is it hard for that person to find the probation officer and share the message? And what do they think you're doing? One, they don't think you're accepting responsibility. You're victim shaming online. And three, they could argue that you're harassing someone. You know what comes with that? More supervision. Maybe they don't violate you for it. I guess we have free speech. But a lot of people go back to prison, not for breaking the law. It's for a violation of your probation. Fundamentally different. So I want all of you to understand everything you write, publish, say matters, because the probation officer is going to come across it. You can either embrace it, or you could not respond, or you can say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I made bad decisions. I'm happy to be home. I'm building my life. I choose not to respond, or I do it in a way that's on video or something like that. I choose not to engage them. But I just want you to know they're watching, and things of that nature can get you into a whole lot of trouble. Okay? Obvious things, of course, reporting to your probation officer when you start your sentence, changing addresses, okay? Things like this have gotten people into trouble. You must get in touch with your probation officer within 2 days if anyone in your household is arrested or questioned by law enforcement. That includes getting like a parking ticket. Even a parking ticket I would disclose, but getting a speeding ticket. You've got to notify them of everything that is taking place. Simply send them a message. Okay. Sam, you went through the drug program. I think Sam may have to hop off if he's still here. Scott, you went through the drug program. What is the check-in process like while you're in the halfway house because you went through the drug program? Are you drug tested every day? Help us understand the supervision, Scott, in the halfway house because you went through RDAP.
Sure. So right now, the halfway house has random drug tests once a week. To maintain compliance in that regard. You also have your RDAP follow-up once a week, as well as individual therapy. I've been told that the same policy will extend while on probation as well.
Okay. So it's important. The drug program, of course, is a program that can take a year off of your sentence. There could be more supervision that accompanies that process. But we want you to understand if there's drug testing or breathalyzers that you're prepared for that, and you're just not caught off guard. Further, if you associate with people who have a criminal record, you want to disclose it. People in prison told me I would never get permission. Of course I did. I worked with Michael. I wasn't able to visit with him. So you're going to hear what you can and cannot do. Most of it is untrue. People don't know what they're talking about. By virtue of the record that I created, that I want you to create, you may be able to work with felons. You may be able to start your own business, though it is frustrating for many people it's frustrating for many people when they've been an entrepreneur and they don't get approved, or the probation office is very resistant to let them build a new business or get funding for the new business or get a line of credit for the new business. It's very difficult. So the reason that Sam was able to join our team, or Scott, or I was able to begin building this business after I was free, is because I had my release plan. I had my letters. I had shown him why I was worthy of this opportunity. Nate shot. Nate, can you give us a minute or two? Nate served 33 months. He's home, but Nate's traveling the country training dentists. He's not picking up phones. There's nothing wrong with it. Nate, why are you able to continue to be an entrepreneur despite owing money?
Because I've been honest with my probation officer and she continues to trust me, and I'm paying back more than I'm doing everything you've said. I mean, truly. I mean, there are some, guidelines or guardrails they'll put around me. Sometimes I get frustrated, but it's not, I mean, I have to go a week and a half out for my travel, and they did the same thing that happened to you, happened to me. They would check in on where I was going to be, was I really speaking there, look at the web stuff that's out there. But being honest with her, she's been great. I mean, really great with everything.
So Nate he's had a great attitude, never complained. I think they could see that energy. But further, while he was in custody, he was able to demonstrate and share why he's worthy, because Nate was a very successful dentist who sold a lot of dental practices for a long time. While he may have lost the license because of the conviction, it doesn't change his skill set. Now he uses that skill set to train dentists, thousands across the country, on marketing and sales and business. He's on probation. He's doing it. It wasn't by accident. So if Nate can do it, if I can do it, if Michael and Sam and Scott can do it,
Yep.
Of course you can do it, but it's not going to happen by showing up and saying, "Hi, nice to know you. I have this idea to do this. I'm not going to bring in potentially any money for a year, but hey, let me do it." They're going to say, "Are you nuts?" My probation officer gave me a little latitude. He said, "I want to see what this looks like in the next 60 days. And because of what we did while in prison, I had clients, we had people paying us immediately, and we weren't looking back." So they're going to expect that plan that you should be building from prison and sharing by way of the reentry plan. And you need a network, because Chris Maloney told us that the better network you have, the less likely you are to reoffend. The reason you want to edit and update your character reference letters so they see that you have stability. Now, as we wrap up,
Justin,
Okay.
one more quick thing.
Yes,
You were talking about that on that sheet that Sam said, your monthly report. Have you come in contact with any felons, or do you travel with any of them? I was just, when I first got out, part of my 12th step in my recovery work was just giving back, which is I wanted to do anyway. And, I get to do this. I mean, I think the guys or ladies may or may not know, I don't get paid to do this. I love to do this stuff. And I had talked to you, when I got to home confinement, and I just was very honest. I said, I want to be able to talk to people that are coming out or going in to prison. She says, "Oh, absolutely. That's wonderful that you do that." She said, "Tell me more about that," And, I'm sure it's in my report, but that's what's enabled me to do stuff like this. And the big thing my probation officer said, we just don't want you want congregation, together, where they're coming to your home and hanging out and everybody's, doing something. So all those rules, as you've always said, just be honest. And
it's kind of an inverted system. The more you share, the more it helps you. It's kind of like some lawyers tell their clients to don't say much in the probation interview. The irony is the more you share and the more they learn, the better. So if they see that you have good motives, it will help. As we wrap up, I want to go through a few frequently asked questions. And then if there are questions at the end, we'll answer them. Is my spouse responsible for my restitution? Why are they asking her for financial information? Look, they want their money. And even if your spouse isn't part of the case, they're going to try to find out all you have and try to get it. So some people in our community have said, my spouse ain't giving you nothing. You want to subpoena her? Great. Sometimes they have subpoenaed the spouse, sometimes not. If they think there's money, they will. Most are acquiescent and turn all of it over. I'm not saying they're going to go and take her money. What they want to know is, are there assets there to justify the restitution payment? Because there have been some knuckleheads out there who come home and say, oh, I'm Mr. Dad now. I'm not making any money. Sorry, I can't pay you nothing. Yet the wife has a very successful career. This happened to someone in Dallas. Comes home, he's Mr. Dad. The mom has a very successful mortgage business. The probation officer saw what she was making, and the probation officer was quite mean and angry, saying, do you eat? Yes. Do you have insurance? Yes. Do you drive a car? Yes. All of these rapid fire yes questions. And the probation officer said, does your wife income help pay for that? Yes. Then she's going to help pay for your restitution. Got the whole thing off to a horrific start. Makes sense, right? So don't do the stupid thing. I ain't making nothing, as someone has actually said to me. They can't get anything. Ha ha. I got the judge, right? Laugh out loud. No one's laughing. Okay. So I want all of you to be aware of this. Make the restitution payment. Eventually you're going to be off probation. Call it a day and get on with your life. You will file your reports monthly. The probation officer will come to the house. Mike came once a month the first 3 months. Then he didn't come for 7 months. I did not do any random drug testing. Are you permitted to work for yourself while on supervised release? Yes. Nate's doing it. I'm doing it. Michael Santos, who served 26 years in prison, did it. Sam did it. But it's not going to happen without a plan, without a path to revenues, without a network, without these things set up. They're just not going to say, sure, go figure it out for a year. And let's hope money comes. You've got to have a path to producing revenues that will enable you to work as an entrepreneur. And it's all easier if you do that while you're in prison. 400 plus people a month reach out to our team. 20% are home from prison. The lion's share of them are struggling because they're like the POs breathing down my neck to get a job. No one will hire me. What do? I have no network. All stems from what they failed to do before and while they were in prison. Be different. That's why we give you these free webinars every week. But you've got to do the work once this webinar wraps up and we get on with our day. Determination of supervised release, certainly. It's easier if restitution is paid. In my case, I didn't care much about it, but a number of people want to get off probation early, typically at the 50% mark. Sam, how does it work with the probation officer? Do they approve or not approve it? What does that look like?
Right. So I applied, and because I changed jurisdictions from Philadelphia to South Florida, I have a different judge. My probation officer said to me, I didn't even need an attorney to go with me. My probation officer explained that there's two choices he has, because really a lot of it falls on him. It's either no or no objection. And in my case, he's going to file a no objection. They're not going to make a recommendation for it, but there's no objection. Ultimately, it's up to the judge, either the same judge who sentenced you, or again, in my case, I changed jurisdictions. So you go to the judge, it'll be 50% for me, and with the probation officer on a no objection, and then ultimately it's up to them.
Thank you. What I want to do is offer a couple of final strategies while on probation. We're always trying to nurture relationships and create assets, right? Many of you have said, what should I do next? What's the next step in this process for me? Our opinion is the creation of really good content helps propel you along the way. So when I was done with probation, I asked my probation officer for a character reference letter. He said, sure. Very simple. I completed supervision, did as directed, turned in the financial information, made myself available, significant payments toward restitution. I was cooperative and professional. I've used this. This is an asset. 2012, haven't probably used it in 8 years, but it's an asset that I can share it with you right now. That was the reason I asked for the letter. But if you were to ask guys in prison, Do you think my PO would write a letter? They'd say, no, are you crazy? Please. The downside is he can say, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm sorry, but he did it. This has been a helpful asset. When you're done with probation, you are going, especially if you owe cash, you're going to get a letter that says something akin to this. Here you go. Let me share the screen. 1 second. It essentially says, now this is when you're done with probation if you owe money. They're going to say, you'll get a letter that says you have completed probation. Actually, this is the wrong letter. Hold on 1 second. I want to share that one too, actually, that I just shared. 1 second. Okay, here we go. 1 sec. Right as you're done with probation, if you owe money, you'll get a letter that says, our records indicate that your supervision has expired or is about to expire, that you owe a debt. This letter is to remind you that while your supervision may have ended, the financial litigation unit has the responsibility of collecting this debt. To avoid collection, you must either pay the entire debt or continue your monthly payments. And with this came like a 40 or 50 page detailed financial worksheet of what they wanted me to fill out. Now, I filled it out and I continued to make payments. I got a letter like this every year for many, many years until my restitution was paid. Now, some people in our community get that letter and they throw it in the trash and say, you know what? I'm done with probation. I'm done with all you people. I'm not sending in another 3 cents. Have a nice life. And some people never actually hear from their probation officer again. Some do. Some respond and give some information. My advice is you sign that under penalty of perjury. And if you lie, there's going to be a problem. So even though I was done with probation in 2012, here's a letter I got February 12th, 2016, out of the blue. This office has been given responsibility for collection of your money. At that time, I owe $224,000. Interest will accrue. I learned in prison my lawyers made a mistake by not asking the judge not to apply interest on my restitution. Many of you, if you've yet to be sentenced and owe money, could ask your lawyer to not have the judge apply interest, because that added up because I paid it in full. Request is made. It's like, oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Let me go send you $224,000. Say the best. We had someone in our community one time get one that said, please remit $287 million by close of business today. They just insert the number. It's a templated letter. Okay. Now, when I got this, in my case, because of the media and attention, plus our team works with criminals, so they might not always like our business. I use work with criminals because that's the phrase they use. I view all of you as people, not as criminals. That's what they told me. They were harder and they were watching me. It got to the point in 2019, they sued me civilly, the Department of Justice did, for the balance of restitution. I sent them a check and I'm now paid in full. The point is they're watching, especially if you have media, if you are having success, if you're posting on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok and you're building a business, they may be on top of you. One time when they came after me, the guy said, we think you're the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, which I found insulting because Jordan Belfort owed $112 million. He paid nothing. I'm like, I'm the only schmuck that pays in full. Why are you calling me? This is what they do. Okay. So I just want to remind you to plan properly. I'm not a estate attorney. Some people get post-nuptials. They think it protects them. Some people get crazy and establish businesses where they're an employee and they're not on it. I'm not an attorney. Don't give advice. I am simply advising you that if you owe money, don't think that it ends when you're done with probation. Some never send another penny. They never hear from them again. Some people like me are fortunate to continue to hear from them every single year. And sometimes the lower amounts are easier to collect and pay. Yeah, I remember, I think a probation officer said to me one time, like, the bigger the numbers, the better for the defendant, because we know they're never going to collect. But when you have a kind of a modest number, you know, a lot of people, I can't pay 500 grand. It's a lot of money, but if you're successful, you're going to pay it. So if there are any questions, happy to answer them. But these are some of our thoughts as you prepare for federal probation before sentencing, in prison, and of course, while on prison. I see a hand up. Is that you, Richie?
Yes, I have 2 restitution questions.
Yep.
One is, I've received inheritance. It's not in my name, but from a grandmother. And so I'll have a restitution, and I wanted to take care of it before my sentencing. Do they care where it comes from?
They don't care. They could ask, but it's not fraudulent. It's clear. But no, they want their cash. So if you're able to make payment, it can certainly mitigate your sentence. It doesn't always mitigate the sentence, so be careful. You don't want to be broke. But no, they don't care. Now, there are times where they can think it's come from, there are people that have paid restitution by way of taking it from other people. So that's not the case here. So it'd be very easy to share where it came from. Now, if any of you borrow money to make a restitution payment, you want to disclose that, because someday if you come into money and you pay that person back, if you haven't disclosed that payment, the probation officer can think you're hiding or moving money. So to your question, Richie, no, it's totally fine. If you want to make the payment, if they ask where it came from, you can share where it came from. To everyone else, if you borrowed money, make sure you note it correctly, including in the probation report, which asks if you owe or have borrowed money. Is there interest attached to it? Some people in our community actually get a note signed with the person who lent them the money. They get it notarized, attesting to what the interest may be. Just be very thorough down the road, because when you're successful and you're questioned on probation and you send $100,000 to someone that loaned you money, how do you think your probation officer is going to respond to that? Not great if it hasn't been disclosed. So did you have a second restitution question?
I have a second question, non-restitution, for my wife.
Yeah.
Who told me to ask this. If you don't know, somebody else may be able to help me, but I'll be going away in probably February, March, and my wife's doing enrollment from healthcare. What
the Bureau of Prisons will treat you, whatever that means. I'm just kidding. Don't get scared. It's good enough, I suppose. But no, you don't have to. You don't have to get a teeth cleaning last before you go in, because Nate's a dentist. It'll take about a year.
Take care of your teeth. Please,
Please,
they just pull them in there. They just want to take them out.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of dudes walking around toothless. Okay, so see the dentist right before you go in. But no, there's you don't need health care because it's provided to you in the Bureau of Prisons. Sam, what does it work when you go to the halfway house? Does the BOP still cover it, or did you get your health insurance turned back
So
on?
I got health insurance as soon as I came out. I went right on to my wife's plan. But
Okay.
If you don't have health insurance, the BOP is nice enough to provide it for you while you're in the BOP. So whether you're home confinement, halfway house, or in prison, they provide it. The difference is if they provide it, they have a list of doctors you can go see, and getting appointments, from what I'm told, can be a nightmare. So my recommendation is, when you get out of prison and maybe halfway house, home confinement, if you're able to get back onto a plan, your own plan, do that as soon as possible.
But Sam, back to that particular answer. I'll be going away in February, March, and open enrollment is next week.
Well,
Do
can't
I
you
just take a chance?
No,
Go 2
no,
months
we,
without
no,
it?
no, we
Yeah,
can't you enroll and then cancel the plan and start
Cancel
making
your-
money?
Right. Get it.
Yeah, so I would enroll, because you say February or March. The way the system works, you could be here in August if the prosecutor catches a case and has to go to trial, and you don't hear from them for 6 months. I thought I was going to get sentenced. Prosecutor got busy. It was delayed more than a year. Don't work on the government's timeline. Live your life, get insurance. If down the road you need to cancel it, you can, and figure it out. But don't work under the presumption of a timeline with the U.S. government that probably won't happen.
And the other thing I want to mention is, for everybody on this call, life insurance. If any of you guys have life insurance, be very careful, because once you've been charged, if you want to try to get new life insurance, the carriers, as a standard policy and procedure, will not underwrite you for new life insurance within typically either until after you've completed your period of probation, supervised release, or, depending upon the carrier, 10 years from the date of your charge. So if you have insurance, life insurance, think very carefully about finding a way to keep it if you have the ability to do so.
That's right. I got life insurance just after I completed probation. The only question was if I had a felony conviction, if it was a DUI, that could have increased my rate, but I was able to get it. But you don't want to let some of these things lapse. And that could include some payments you may just suck up while you're away because you don't want to lose them. Couple of things before I go to the hands. A very great comment. Be careful. I paid $3.4 million before sentencing, before being told I would get a big credit. There is no certainty that you will get a shorter sentence if you pay all of the money back. It's kind of a wicked system. Some people regret it. Some cases it helps. I regret it paying the money. It bought me 6 months out of prison, but in retrospect, I needed the money. Many of you have children, you're married, you want to get out as quickly as possible. Garrett Bauer, I believe, was an insider trader many years. It's like going back 10 years in New York. He paid $11 million at sentencing for his paid it in full, $11 million, left him totally destitute. The judge still gave him 9 years at Montgomery. So I just want you to be careful about making payments and understand how it can help you. It's the analogy of, hey, you robbed a bank, you paid the money back, you still robbed a bank, you're going to be punished. It's true, bankruptcy will not wipe out your restitution, but it never showed up on my credit report. My credit's always been over 700. The restitution, people, oh, it's going to come up civilly and you're never going to be able to get a loan. Not true. If you pay, I've been able to get credit. You will get fired from a lot of banks throughout this journey. I'm on bank number 6, but it's part of the journey that you get fired as a consequence of this. I see hands that are up. Dusko, you had your hand up earlier. You pulled it down, perhaps because I didn't call on you soon enough. Forgive me. Jason, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'll be quick.
Yep.
I'm going to send this to Sam, you guys, but this is the satisfaction of monetary portion of judgment that I received. So, like you, Justin, well, several others. They ordered me to pay every dime before I went in.
Yep.
So I've done that, and they sent me the letter with regards to that's being fine. It hasn't showed up on my credit yet. Hope it doesn't, because we dispatched of it, pretty quickly. The question I have for you is that since Biden is extended the emergency the CARES Act piece, and I surrender on December 15th, do you think I still would be eligible for that?
For the CARES Act?
Yeah.
I think, as I understand it, while not a law, as an executive order the Attorney General signed that continues to be extended, if the CARES Act is still in existence, and if you meet the criteria articulated by the Bureau of Prisons, and if you apply, there is a chance you may or may not succeed. But since the CARES Act is still in existence, yes, you are still eligible for a potential earlier release based on the CARES Act. And of course, the First Step Act will benefit you as well. We have already we've done webinars on the First Step Act, earned time credits. We have a calculator. I'll go through the calculator again with Sam and everyone next week. But yes, there is it still exists for you to benefit from it.
Got it.
Okay. I wanted someone, Eric, it's very good to see you. As I recall, Eric was sentenced by a very difficult judge, Judge Pearson in Ohio. Eric, if I'm wrong, tell me. But I know Judge Pearson was tough, someone I spoke with on stage. Eric, it's very good to see you. Eric asked if restitution. Yeah, it's so good to see you, bud. That was a tough sentencing hearing. She was tough, bud. I'm so happy you're home.
Yes.
She was tough. Can restitution be negotiated as a lump sum payment? This comes up every day in prison. Remember, Nate? It's kind of like, I'm going to negotiate 3 cents on.
Yes.
This is what I have seen, Eric. I have never seen. I've seen a lot of things, including someone who owed like $2 million. Years later, they refinanced a home off probation. The government found out about it. They seized the proceeds from the refinance. In that one instance, that was devastating for the family. And the husband only went on because they needed his income to help qualify for the refinance. The feds took the cash. It was devastating. And it's the reason many people who owe restitution, they don't own the home with their spouse. They've got to buy it. They're not on it, right? There's some of these consequences. In that case, his lawyer said, look, you're never going to get another penny from him. This is it. And the government said, fine. That's like the only case. I have seen people negotiate the fines or the interest away. So we had someone we work with someone who had, I think it was like $350,000, and his lawyer said, look, he can do a lump sum. Can you just take the interest away that's been accruing for like 9 years? That's a big, they'll have discretion there. But I've never seen them actually buy into this idea of like taking 5 or 10 cents on the dollar. Nate or Scott or Sam, if you've heard of that, but it's a common rumor in prison. I don't believe it to be true. Doesn't mean you can't try. The problem by even offering it up is some people have done that too. Like years will go by, like, oh, can I offer you X? They're like, sure, show us all of your financials so we can assess if that's a fair offer. Then they see everything you have and they want more because you owe this. But Sam, didn't you hear that every day in prison? Eric, the answer to the question, I believe, is no, other than perhaps some interest that's accruing. Doesn't mean you can't try. Just understand it could open a can of worms. Sam, I don't know if you have any insights on that.
I mean, we've helped clients with this, Michael, is negotiate. I'm sorry, Justin. We've helped people negotiate reductions in restitution payments, but that's well past, years past the ending of their supervised release. So typically, there's a 20-year period after the time you get out of prison that the government can still make an effort to collect, and it's a potentially criminal act. Depending upon who the victims are, going back 10, 12, 14 years into that period and negotiating tends to be a little more feasible.
You summed up a good point, Eric. It does last. Thank you, Sam. It lasts for 20 years. So when I was sentenced, the government put a lien on my home. Some of you have forfeitures. They're going to take it. They want the jewelry, the watches, the cars. Many people just have to make restitution, and they don't require a payment. In my case, in many cases, they put a lien on my home that lasts for 20 years. And after I satisfied the restitution in November 19, I worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Actually, my friend Sam's home. He's a real estate agent. He facilitated it for me with a notary and a first fidelity and all that stuff to get title. The U.S. Attorney, they removed the lien from my home. So now I'm free to do whatever I like with it. But it does last for 20 years. And
Justin, the things we would hear too, it's just what you said, Sam's so right. Guys would be in prison. Oh, when I get out, you don't have to pay when you're off paper. It doesn't matter. I mean, crazy things. And just like you said, the money's not owed to that person or your prosecutor. It's the government. They don't care. I mean, they're after it. Yeah. And everything that you've said is, what I've seen is so true. So this information you're giving is spot on because, but the inmate.com, that runs inside those prison walls is, I've got a friend that didn't pay it and he didn't, get caught, and you're still like, get caught. You're still in criminal thinking. Just pay it, work on paying it, and get finished with it.
That's right. And that's sort of like what I said earlier about the guy who got caught using the credit card at a coffee bean, and his response was, I should have paid cash. No, that's not the right. You never should have gone without permission. And Andrew, I appreciate even your message here of what you wrote here, a paragraph on where you live about close family relationships. Yeah, that's right. Chris Maloney said in the interview, like Michael Santos asked Chris Maloney, the former head of probation, what would you have expected of a guy that served a quarter century in prison? And Chris said, most probably likely to reoffend because you've served so long in prison. You don't have the network, right? And look at what Michael accomplished. So Andrew's point is spot on. If you have support, employment opportunities, you got to share it. You're a marketer. That's really the heart of what this is. You're a marketer. You're marketing yourself to a probation officer, to these people.
Justin, it's Andrew. I'm going to hop off for a second, but I just wanted to say, before I went on, I really disliked all your marketing. I felt like it was all marketing, but now that I'm on the other side, I see so much how important that is. I was always a business person, and I always kind of had people doing that for me. Now I really see how important that is. It seemed like fluff back then, but even if it's not fluff, it's just exactly what you said about Michael Santos sending out those letters. Someone's going to bite somewhere, and you're in a position, you put yourself in a position where, you may have been on the top of the heap and now you're on the bottom, and, you got to do 100 more than it might seem like you want to. But it really does make a huge difference. I did some very little things about 90 days before coming out, and that's I had a 2-year plan for where I'd be, and I'm at least a year ahead of that because of that 90 days of work before I left.
Andrew, I really appreciate that honesty and you saying that. I know it always hasn't been the easiest, so I'm grateful that you contributed and shared that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I see a hand up here, Ryan.
Yes. Hi. Good afternoon, Justin. My mom hired you for my twin brother's character reference letters, and they really worked with his judge in Akron, Ohio. Thank you very much. I just came home. I did 7.5 years. I did 4 of it, and for pleading guilty to a $4.2 million wire fraud for buying stolen property on eBay. My question is, now that I'm home, obviously I ran a healthcare company, and I went back. I'm getting my CDL license right now. My problem is, I'm sure you're familiar with a couple of judges in Ohio with Benita Pearson, Judge Adams, and Gone. I'm moving to Portland, Oregon, to just to try to start my life again and get out of these courts. Do you guys offer assistance to try to help guys that are moving? And I'm also a guy that I didn't earn good time credits. I did the RDAP program, but because I came home, none of the earned good time credits I got credited for. And I have 3 years of paper, and I'm just trying to go back home to Cancun, Mexico. But in the meantime, I'm trying to go to Portland, Oregon. Do you guys offer assistance for guys that are returning home? Do you guys have a plan or anything for guys that are in my situation? Because there are a lot of us.
Yes, what I'd encourage you to do is, I'd love for actually Scott and Sam to hop on a call with you, because Scott's new to our team, so he can learn from what Sam will articulate to you about some of the ways of how we think if you want to transfer from Ohio, wherever it is, to Oregon, the process that you want to put in place. And we can share with you like what Michael Santos put in place to transfer to a new probation office. Okay, so that's one. And then also they can offer some insights on the First Step Act and how Andrew, who just hopped off, he's free. He got some of his First Step Act credits applied to him, kind of what that's looking like. If you're not getting credits, how you could go down that path. But I'd encourage you offline, perhaps, to speak with Scott, and Sam can offer insights on what do you need to put in front of are you done with the halfway house and you're on probation, or you're still in custody?
No, I'm actually, I started my probation in July. I've now been August, September, October, November. I've been on 4 months of supervised release.
Have you put in a request to go to Oregon or not yet?
No, not yet.
So what I would suggest is, and we give away a lot of these resources on how to do it. If you want help, you can speak with Sam and Scott. But much like you might have written a letter to your sentencing judge requesting leniency, you want to create a plan that shows why moving to Oregon is in your best interest, primarily for your victims who are owed money. It's all about them. It's not Oregon gets me further away from these tough judges in Ohio. When they hear that, they may think, we want to keep them here for that reason. What opportunities exist for you in Oregon that makes it more likely that victims you created will get paid back by way of this move? So you kind of need to recreate your reentry plan if it's not created. Write this narrative with hopes that it will persuade your probation officer to approve this transfer and move. It won't happen just by asking. It's got to be the right messaging. They could respond and say, we'd like to reassess in 3 or 6 months. I can't predict what they'll say. What I suggest is you create the right plan that puts you in the best position to succeed. And it won't come by asking. It will only happen by content that you create. You can do it. That's why we give it all away. Or you can discuss with Sam how our team can help. Similar to how the character reference letters helped your brother. Same situation. What are you creating to put in front of someone who's going to think, does this move to Oregon put him in a position to pay his victims back? Because if you owe money, that's all they care about.
Thank you.
I'll let Sam and Scott connect. Scott, please have Sam, let Scott join that call so we can learn, okay?
Yeah, I got your text and call when we were speaking. So
Okay, good.
I'll connect with both of you after this call.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Welcome home, by the way. Well, it's a very long sentence. I'm very happy for you and your family. Welcome home.
Thank you. I love
Thank
these
you.
conference calls. They're very informative. It's just, someone spoke about inmate.com, and everything you hear inside And these calls, I told all my friends that are coming home, they got to jump on these calls because they're so informative. Thank you.
This isn't depressing. This is fact-based. Some of the reality and facts can be depressing, but at least you know, at least you have a plan. Dusko, earlier your hand was up, it went down. Did you still have a question?
No, sir, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for continuing to come and contribute. It's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Hey, Justin.
everyone. Yes,
Justin,
Dr.
can I add one quick thing?
Yes.
As an encouragement, guys, this is not a death sentence. You're going to be home. I remember Justin meeting with me, and when you get out, look, follow everything they're saying from the front end to the back end. Get ahead of it, advocate for yourself. But on the back end, I'll tell you a story. You know, my shame was so great coming out. I thought nobody really wanted to hire me. I used to do this. I used to own 33 offices, as you know, Justin, and said that across the country. But when I sold those, I used to still consult. I'm charging double now because I went to prison rather than not, and I owned it. And people are paying it, and I'm so busy because it's all about transparency. I mean, it's amazing what this does. So please don't be down and out, folks. I mean, you've got a great, great, great future. I promise. It may be a while, but when you get out, own it and just do the right thing. But I just want to say, like you said that, Justin, I mean, just tell the truth.
And it starts now.
Yes.
If everything you do leading up to sentencing in prison. Nate, thank you for sharing that. I'm super excited to see you in Orange County tomorrow. Short of that, we can wrap up the webinar. Of course, this will be recorded. I'll send it out next week. Haven't yet decided what we're going to cover next week. I'll speak with Scott and Sam. I was thinking we would do like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. I thought we would do like a rapid fire of like 10 minutes on First Step Act, 10 minutes on reputation management, 10 minutes on prison, 10 minutes on probation, things of that nature, and just cover a bunch of subjects because I know all of you are at different stages of the journey, and something we're saying today may not be applicable to you and you may not join, and we don't want that. So I thought it'd be fun to do like a rapid fire of subjects next week.
We have one more question. Diane, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. On Tuesday, I'll be picking up my sister and driving her to the halfway house. So I guess my question is, I'm hearing y'all say right to the probation officer. Is the probation officer who was her probation officer originally, will they be her probation officer? They came to check out her house. We're hoping she goes right back to house, goes to house arrest. But driving to the halfway house, what to expect when we get to the halfway house, and should she write some type of plan before she gets there to hand to them?
So it will most likely be a different probation officer than the person that wrote the probation report, and different from the pretrial services officer. And to the plan, I'd encourage, if she has a few days left, and when she calls you, if she has not already, I'd encourage her to write a summary of what she's done while in prison, programs she participated in, how the programs have helped her, and how and why she'll be compliant on probation. So she kind of needs to create her release plan if she has not already, because it's something she has
done that and handed it over to the warden and the counselor. So I guess kind of revamp that just a little bit to apply to the probation officer.
Without question. I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea, right? A lot of people meet with the probation officer and have no plan and don't have anything to say. She separates herself if she says, this is what I learned in prison, and this is what I'm hoping to do moving forward. And here's some character reference letters of people who continue to support me. And so it's all about the right messaging along the way. So I'm so happy that she's coming home. Congratulations. And I encourage her to share her progress with people who will oversee her.
Just so you know, her sister Tammy's a client, is getting out under the CARES Act 18 months early.
Fantastic. Congratulations to you and your family. I know it's a little nerve-wracking, but super exciting. I'm so happy for all of you. Thank you for letting our team help.
Thank you. And when we arrive to the halfway house, is it something that I'm going to expect to, I mean, like the warden says they should just do a two-hour orientation and you should go home. That seems a little optimistic to me because he doesn't really have control of the halfway house. What do we expect when we get there?
So you can expect every situation slightly different. You'll drop her off and she may have some boxes of books and clothes and things of that nature, but she's still confined. It's a new environment. She'll go in, wait, meet with the case manager. They'll assign her housing, and there'll be an orientation she'll go through perhaps over a day or a week or 2 weeks. And she may have to fill out passes again if people are going to visit with her. May get permission to use an iPhone. Will be drug tested daily. So it's just working her way through the bureaucracy. But you'll drop her off like you did when she went to prison. You'll leave. She'll stay. She'll have more freedom and learn about work and passes and get an indication of when she'll go to home confinement. But it's quasi freedom, to be very clear. She's still confined. You're still locked up. And many people can be disappointed once they get to the halfway house, and many initially have regret and wish they were back in prison unless they have the right job lined up. And as Sam, someone wrote, which halfway house? Every halfway house is a little bit different. Some, they put ankle bracelets on you. Michael had an ankle bracelet on for a year in San Francisco. In Hollywood, where I was, they did not. So she's going to learn pretty quickly the rules and what to do and what not to do. But it's you're going to drop her off and leave.
So what I hear you saying is not what she's heard the warden saying. And again, I know he's just the warden. So there's no possibility that she will get out immediately. Is that what I hear you saying?
Right. I mean, keep in mind what I'm conveying to you is what we typically see within this bureaucracy that is the Bureau of Prisons. In my experience and a lot of the experience, there's an orientation that you go through in the halfway house. And
right.
Unless things might have changed with COVID, she could check. Anything's possible. She could check in and they send her right to home confinement. Maybe. Sam, did you see that? How long?
Happened to me. So I actually got furloughed. Never even went to the halfway house. Went to the halfway house 6 weeks after I got home. They slapped the bracelet on me, gave me orientation. I left. So I never went to the halfway house.
So every case is different. Some people go to the halfway house, they go through orientation, they get permission to work travel passes. That's it. Some people like Sam, check in, go right to home confinement. I would prepare for the worst, that they may keep her there for a little bit. But because of the CARES Act, perhaps, the reason they're releasing her due to health issues, they may say she's at risk for us and her for being here, get her out. I just want to condition you for disappointment. So anything on top of that is a benefit. But there's certainly a chance they could send her right home.
Okay. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, guys, are any other hands up? Are we done? Great. All right. Thank you all very much for contributing. Have a wonderful Saturday and rest of your weekend. We'll do it again next Friday and Saturday. And just very grateful for your attention and time. Thank you all so much.
See you later. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Bye-bye.